Hey everybody, how you doing out there? And welcome to another ranking video. This is something I have never really done before. I'm actually doing ranking the deaths of Freddy Krueger. I have watched a couple other people's videos on this and I thought, you know what? I like to put my take and my spin on these deaths here. Now the way that I'm actually going to do these is I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens just before, talk about the death, and then why I do or do not actually enjoy that there. Now, this is going to be from worst to best. There's 9 deaths. I would also be kind of curious, how would you rank all the deaths, or even just give me your best and give me your worst? We can discuss it in the comment section. Okay, going with number 9, it's got to be the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, the whole thing kind of goes, Freddy Krueger just killed Nancy's mother. You got Nancy and you got Nancy's dad. And Nancy's like, you know what, Dad, give me like a minute. I will be downstairs. So she actually shuts the door on her dad and she's like, Freddy, I know you're still here. And she pretty much actually bitches him out by saying, I'm taking back my energy. I'm taking back my power that I gave you. I want my mother. I want my friends back. She decides to turn the other cheek and she's about to open up the door. Freddy takes about 1 or 2 steps forward and then just disappears. I just have always hated this death. Simple death because of what Nancy said, but I always did not really like it. Going with number 8. Is the remake. So we have Nancy in the dream. You got Quentin in the real world who needs to wake her up eventually. Whenever she is able to try to get to Freddy, Quentin actually has to do something to wake up Nancy. Nancy grabs Freddy, brings Freddy out in the real world. Freddy's about to kill Quentin. Nancy comes out with the machete and chops off Freddy's hand with the glove, and then she slices his neck. Now, the head never comes off. You just get the blood coming out of the neck, and then he just falls backwards. Not exactly original for me. Number 7, Freddy versus Jason. So you got Freddy and Jason at Crystal Lake. They're fighting. Laurie and Will are trying to figure out ways to actually stop Freddy, I guess, as much as Jason is trying to stop Freddy, since he's more of the main bad guy of that movie. They actually have gasoline on this particular area. They actually have, like, looks like torches and fire on this gasoline, and Jason and Freddy blow out into the lake. Freddy comes in with Jason's machete. He's about to stab Laurie and Will. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work out for him because Jason actually ripped off Freddy's arm, the glove side. He actually ends up using that arm, sticks it through Freddy's back into the front, and there's the claw. Freddy goes down onto his knees, and Laurie picks up the machete because Freddy drops it, chops off his head. Again, just like the whole thing with the remake, I've seen a lot of head chopping off. I'm like not exactly that impressed with that either. So now we're actually in the middle of this list here. These next 3 are just in the okay section, but at least they have some creativity to them compared to the bottom 3 I actually just mentioned. So number 6 is going to be part 2. Got Lisa, who goes into the boiler room. Now Jesse is actually inside Freddy, his body, his soul, and as long as Freddy is walking around, Jesse is actually being slowly crushed by Freddy here until possibly Freddy dies. You have Lisa trying to negotiate with Freddy. It doesn't quite work out. She actually kisses Freddy whenever Freddy starts getting a little weak because Lisa's screaming to Jesse, you can fight him, you can get out, you have more strength than he does. So Freddy starts losing a little bit of that energy and strength because Jesse is trying to fight out of Freddy's body because love conquers all, or at least that's what I got out of this. The boiler room just starts burning itself, and then Freddy, he is burning, his face is melting off of his body. I thought that was actually a really cool practical effect there, but then all of a sudden he just tips over. That's all it is. He just kind of falls over there. Well, what else is the body supposed to do? Jesse actually is able to come out and sort of happy ending. Number 5, part 4. The whole thing is you got Alice and Freddy and they're fighting in the church and they both get some pretty good licks there. All of a sudden, Alice has a mirror and then she flashes it at Freddy. Freddy sees his own reflection. There ends up being this flash of light that actually pushes Freddy back. His souls start coming out of his body. You get like all these like baby hands and like, you know, faces trying to get out. And there are some cool moments going on with that. And then all of a sudden there's a second flash of light from that mirror, and he pretty much gets pinned to a wall with all the baby arms there. You get two of the hands, you get one that gets to the bottom of his mouth, you get one that at first I thought it was just doing the forehead, but it was grabbing one of Freddy's eyes and rips open up his mouth, and the souls are able to disappear. Ripping of the mouth I thought was cool, but just the way that they kind of, you know, gave you the execution of him having all these like baby hands because the souls are trying to get out, I always just thought was kind of another silly, stupid ending. Number 4 is going to be part 5. Now, part 5 is pretty much almost the same as 4, but at least it's a little bit more creative. Now, in this one, you got, once again, Alice taking on Freddy, but she's actually a little weaker in this one, and she cannot do it, not without her son Jacob's help. Freddy gives some of Jacob his powers. Well, unfortunately, that was a no-no there, or should have not ever went that way, because Jacob was actually able to use his power against Freddy. Like, pretty much all he really does is he just throws up on Freddy's sweater, and then the 3 souls, that's all, the only 3 souls that he ever killed in this entire movie, come out of his back and start dragging him towards his mother, who is a nun. You got these 3 souls, and they're dragging Freddy, and Freddy can't even really grab onto anything there. And all of a sudden, I guess, finally, baby Freddy comes out of adult Freddy, you know, his back, and then the nun ends up picking up Freddy's baby and putting it back in her womb. The way that they created the whole souls coming out of his body in this one compared to part 4 was actually pretty cool. Now we are in the top 3, the ones that I really do like when it comes to Freddy's deaths. So number 3 is going to be Freddy's dead. Now how this all kind of goes about is you got Maggie, who actually is Freddy's daughter. She puts on those 3D glasses for the last like 10 minutes of the film. And she goes into the dream world and goes into Freddy's mind. They talk a little bit, they get into a little bit of a struggle. She's actually able to pull him out into the real world. But it turns out he doesn't end up in the same room as Maggie. He actually ends up in a different room. I thought that was actually different. So you got Maggie, Tracy, and Doc. And Doc's the therapist at the building where Maggie works. And of course that was where they were. So Freddy ends up in the basement of that building. Maggie, Tracy, and Doc grabbing some weapons in the basement. Maggie goes in. There ends up being a little bit of a fight between them. Not as good as I thought the fight was going to actually be. Maggie breaks Freddy's fingers. Freddy, whenever after he loses his glove, eventually gets back and tries to put it on. Maggie is throwing ninja stars and knives, and I think even ends up having like a crowbar she puts straight into his hand. She ends up putting on the glove, stabbing him. Tracy throws Maggie dynamite that's already lit up, sticks it right in Freddy's chest. Maggie runs away. Freddy looks at the camera and says, "Kids," and then he blows up, and I've always thought that was such a fun death. And number 2 is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So what we get just before the death is you got Heather Langenkamp, who has to play Nancy one last time, grabs herself a knife. She goes into the dream world because she has to try to defeat Freddy one more time and get her son back. So she eventually gets a chance to see her son. Freddy comes out of nowhere and pretty much kicks Nancy's ass. So the thing is, she's knocked out, the son runs away, the son ends up pretty much like in a little cubby hole, but he's got to be careful because in the middle of this room there's flames shooting up, so he doesn't want to burn to death if he can actually help it there. So Freddy cannot squeeze himself into this cubby hole, so the hand starts stretching out just like what we got in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Nancy finally wakes up, picks up the knife, she runs up to Freddy, stabs him in the thigh. It hurts him pretty badly there. Dylan is actually able to escape in a different route out of there. There's a little bit of other stuff that actually happened, but I'm just going to kind of skip right into where Heather and Dylan actually push Freddy into that cubby hole there. Almost looks like it could be a stove and all that, and he burns like the witch from Hansel and Gretel. That ending definitely was inspired by Hansel and Gretel, but I really did like where Freddy turns into a demon, turns into maybe the devil, and then burns away, which I still actually like it. Number 1 is part 3. You got Dr. Gordon and Nancy's dad, they actually end up driving to a church, and Dr. Gordon ends up getting some holy water and a cross, and they actually end up finding Freddy's remains wherever John Saxon and the rest of the Elm Street parents where they buried him. Well, you got Nancy and the rest of the gang in the dream world there, trying to see how they can get themselves out if possible. I like the trick where Freddy pretends that he's actually Nancy's dad and ends up killing Nancy. I know a lot of people are not the biggest fan of that. Dr. Gordon gets his ass whooped a little bit. He eventually wakes himself up, and he actually pushes Freddy's remains back in the hole, and he starts doing the holy water and the ashes to ashes and dust to dust, and holes start coming in or out of Freddy. So he's just all messed up there. Dr. Gordon grabs the cross, gets it as close as he can to Freddy's remains of his head there. A big cross comes up on the forehead, and then this covers his whole face. He starts spinning and then just disappears, and I really did like that. So there is my Freddy's deaths ranking from worst to best. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for that there. I will see you guys in the next video.